Ecclesiastes is a book of wisdom. It's a book God has inspired and spoken truth and wisdom through Solomon. As we discovered a few weeks ago through Dr. Thompson, Solomon asked God to give him wisdom. God gave him wisdom. And as God gave him wisdom, he shared some of that wisdom with us through the book of Proverbs, through Song of Solomon, through Ecclesiastes. In Ecclesiastes, the book of wisdom is trying to get across what is life about. What is life about? If you've ever asked the question, what is life about? What's the purpose of my life? What should I be pursuing? This is actually your book. Though it's not one that's commonly looked at. I don't know why. It's what it's all about. But basically what Solomon does is he says that he begins to ask, what is life all about? As he begins to pursue that thought process, and begins to question God about that, as he begins to receive wisdom from God about what life is about, what he tends to see is what life's not about. What he does, he begins to look around and he begins to see, well, life isn't about that. And life isn't about this. And life isn't about that thing over there either. And what he does, he begins to see all the things that the world is saying this is what life is about. That the world is screaming out, this is what your life is, and this is what your life should be about, and this is what you need to pursue. And God's wisdom is the exact opposite of that. And so basically, as Ecclesiastes is written, is Solomon looks and goes, I know the world's saying it's this, but I've looked and I've seen, and it isn't that. So last week we saw a little bit about what life is and isn't about, and this week we're going to see another section of that. Ecclesiastes chapter 4 happens to be one of the sections of Scripture that more people know than others. It's quoted a lot of weddings, usually out of context. But we're going to put it in context. We're going to see what does God say to us from Ecclesiastes chapter 4. And you may actually see some of current events in Ecclesiastes 4. Chapter 4, verse 1. Again I looked and saw all the oppression that was taking place under the sun. I saw the tears of the oppressed, and they have no comforter. Power was on the side of their oppressors, and they have no comforter. And I declared that the dead who had already died are happier than the living who are still living. But better than both is he who has not yet been born, who has not seen the evil that is done under the sun. We'll just start there. Solomon says he's looking around. As he looks around, as he looks at life, he begins to notice some things. He says, I looked and I saw. What did he see when he looked around? He saw Charlottesville in some ways. But it's not just Charlottesville. He began to see that there's oppression all around. It's everywhere. It's not isolated. It's not just in this town or that town. It's not just in that person's life. It's everywhere. That there's pain and there's toil and there's oppression everywhere. A friend of mine said it this way, everybody has a sad story. Everybody has a sad story. And what Solomon's doing is he's looking around, and as he looks around, he sees. And as he looks around, he sees the oppression, he sees all these different things that are happening, and he sees this, there was no comforter. In a sense, what he's saying is, I'm looking around, and I'm seeing all this oppression, and I'm seeing no end to it. Like everywhere I look, there's just pain. The thing also is, he says, I see the tears of the oppressed. So there's something about the way he looks. And there's something about how he notices. It's one thing to look around, but it's another thing to see, I think he's telling us. I looked around and I saw. You can look around and you can see things. And you can look around and you can see things. And what it says is he begins to see their tears. And what I think Solomon is trying to drive home at this point is, you have to connect with the emotions of people and their problems. Because why does Solomon begin to drive this point home to us? Is because he begins to see their tears. He doesn't just see an event that's happening on the TV, so to speak. And go, man, that's horrible. And just go back on with his life. No, actually what he does, he sinks into it and he sees the tears that are being wept over the pain that they're in. And then he sees the tears that are being wept over the pain that they're in, and he sees no comfort coming in. And this bothers him greatly. There's no comfort. And he sees that there's power. But the power isn't on the side of the oppressed. The power is on the side of the oppressor. And there is no comforter. There's no one to step in. There's no one to speak against. There's no one to stop. There's no one to bring an end to the people in power and their oppression. There is no comforter. It's like, what the heck is life all about if it's all this pain? Said differently, there can't be a God. There's too much pain. People will say that there is no God because of the pain that they see all around them. So in some ways, you're seeing what Solomon sees. I look around, I see all this. There can't be any point to this. It's meaningless. And then he goes this far. He says, look, it's better to be dead already than to live in this thing. You know what? It is better not to even have been born to have seen this. This is where he goes. He's like, this is how bad it is. I look around and I see all these injustices. I look around and I see, people might put it this way today, that people just suck. Forgive me for that word. But when you look around, it's like, why would people do this to that person? Why would that person do this to this person? Why would this happen or that happen? What in the world is this? And the way people treat each other, I don't want to be in that. And he sees their tears. And I'll tell you right now, if you're watching TV and you're not seeing the tears, you're missing it. If you're not connecting with the emotion behind it, you've missed it. If you aren't recognizing that there is deep, deep, deep pain in the events you're watching carry out in another town, you've missed it. You have to look, and you have to see, and you have to see the tears. And if the church is going to respond in any way, it first has to see the tears, first has to feel the tears, and once it can see it and once it can feel it, I believe comfort can come in. But when you don't see it and you don't feel it, no comfort will come in because you don't even really see the need. You're like, oh, that stinks for them. No, you got to sit in it with them. You've got to come alongside. You've got to grieve with them. You have to see it. You've got to hear, how does this impact you? You've got to hear, how does this pain resonate with you? What's going on? Part of the reason there's no comfort is because people aren't seeing the tears. They're just like, oh, I'm glad that's not happening right here. You got to see it. You got to sit in it. Because until you do, you can't bring comfort. Until you do, you won't even know what to comfort anyway. If you don't sit in it with them, if you don't listen to them, if you don't find out where the pain is, you might even try to bring comfort. It'll be the wrong kind of comfort. Because it'll be your perceived comfort. No. Solomon says, I looked around and I saw there was no comforter. Now the thing about Ecclesiastes is context is really important. So Ecclesiastes is going to continue. You may not see how it connects yet, but you got to hold on to this. And Ecclesiastes is going to begin to answer towards this direction. It may look like it doesn't at first, but it will get there. Verse 4 sees Solomon sees something else. First thing he sees the oppression and no comfort. Second thing he sees is verse 4. And I saw that all labor and all achievement spring from man's envy of his neighbor. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. What did he see? So the first time he sees oppression and no comfort. What does he see the second time? He looks around and he sees something. Sees futility, he sees envy, right? Anything else you would say that he's seeing? Striving, all right? He sees labor and achievement, he sees striving, and it springs from something. It springs from envy of his neighbor. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Here's what he's saying. I looked around and I see oppression and no comfort. And then I look around and I see something else. I see people who have wealth of different kinds. And I see them working to acquire this wealth. And I've noticed something. I've noticed why they're working so hard. They're working so hard because they have envy about what their neighbor has. And they think they have to work harder to get it. So I see this oppression, and I see no comfort, and then I see this wealth over here, and I see people chasing after it, and I realize that the reason people are working hard is because of their envy. They have to get more. He says, this is me. He says, chasing after the wind. Have you ever tried to capture the wind? Can you do it? Can you bottle it up? Can you somehow put it in a container, bottle it up, and open it up, and the wind comes out? You can't do it. You cannot chase it. You cannot grab it. You cannot contain it. You cannot hold on to it. You cannot save it for later. You cannot make it appear when you want it to. You can't do anything about it. This is what he says, chasing after the wind. He says, getting wealth in the same way is just like that. You can't really bottle it up. You can't really contain it. And you can't really get everything you need. You just can't. And if you're going to work really hard like this, you got to ask yourself, what are you working for? What's the purpose? Why are you working this hard? And there's going to be labor, there's going to be striving in your life, but why are you going through all of this? What's the point? If you're working this hard, and people of Fairfax County, listen to this. If you're working this hard, why? If you're type A, why? If you're working 80 hours a week, why? If you're working yourself to the bone, why? What's the point? And when Solomon looks at it, he goes, I'll tell you why they're doing it. It's envy. And you have to ask yourself, why? And if you don't or are unwilling to ask yourself this question, do I have envy in my heart? Then you may not get the wisdom God wants to give you this morning. We work really hard. We are wealthy beyond belief. Even our people who don't have a lot compared to the world. We have a lot. But really, oftentimes what we're doing and why we're working as hard as we are is because we need a bigger TV, we need a bigger house, we need a shinier car, we need this, we need that. So we work harder. We determine what we want, and we're like, okay, well, I have to work in order to get this. And so we work really, 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 really hard. It's always to go get more. And he says, why are you doing it? You're never going to get enough anyway. You can't bottle it up. You can't contain it. And I just see that everybody's doing it because of envy. And you have to ask yourself, if you're working really hard, and if you're asking yourself, why am I so tired all the time? I doubt you've asked this question, do I have envy in my heart? I would invite you, based on Ecclesiastes, to have the Lord search your heart and see if there's envy there. And if there's envy there, I'd let it go. Now here's the deal. Solomon says it this way. He says, look, I see why everybody's working so hard. It's because they got to have this, they got to have that. And they look at this person over there and they're like, well, I want that, and so I got to get that. I see that's why they're working so hard. So you could have a response to that and say, okay, recognize this. Solomon, I agree with you. I think that's wrong. I probably shouldn't work so hard. Maybe I don't. Here's what he says. Verse 5. The fool folds his hands and ruins himself. So the answer isn't to just stop working. That's not the answer. You might look at this and go, okay, envy is driving this. We're working really hard on all this kind of stuff. So I guess I'll just stop working so hard. This is not the answer. Just fold your hands and do nothing. If you do, you'll come to ruin. That's not the answer. That's one extreme versus the other. Verse 6. Better one handful with tranquility than two handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. Some readers will say, better one handful with peace than two handfuls with labor. Here's the problem with a lot of the things going on in Fairfax County. Here is our work. 2 fistfuls of labor. And we're working way too hard, chasing too many things, trying to get more of the things we think we need and the things that we think we want that are really driven by our envy and not really driven by peace with the Lord. And what he's saying is, it's better to have one hand with peace and one hand with labor. It's like you want to work and you want to have time to rest. You need both in your life. And if you don't have both, there's no meaning to your life. If you don't have rest coupled with work, there is no meaning. That's what's meaningless. But if you have work and you have rest, there you'll find meaning. So with that, you have to decide, how much do you need? And how much rest do you need? And you got to decide on the front end, before you get in it, what it is that you need. You don't let work happen to you. You happen to your work. Don't let money happen to you. Happen to your money. You have to decide on the front end, what is it you want. Now, I've got 2 friends that they decided this a long time ago. And they decided how much money they felt like they needed in order to live here and in order to have a family here. They figured out what that number was. Once they found out what that number was, they then made this decision. No matter how much raises we get, we're going to give it away. We determine how much we need. That's legitimate. We determine how much rest we need. That's legitimate. And then anything above it, we just gave it away. And that's how they protected themselves from envy. Because they had said, I'm not going to chase this because that person down there got this, and all of a sudden I've got to work harder to go get that too. No, they decided on the front end what it was that they needed, and then they set a cap to it on their hearts and said, that's all we need. And they lived with rest, and they lived with balance of work. And that life-work balance, you'll find life in it. If you're too lazy, you'll come to ruin. If you work too hard, you'll come to ruin. Better 1 handful with tranquility than 2 handfuls with toil. Verse 7. Again I saw something meaningless under the sun. There was a man all alone. He had neither son nor brother. There was no end to his toil, yet his eyes were not content with his wealth. For whom am I toiling, he asked, and why am I depriving myself of enjoyment? This too is meaningless, a miserable business. What did he see this time? Okay, yeah. I think along those lines, he's seeing this. Here's a person who says life's about wealth and the things that you have, so I'm going to work really hard, and I'm not going to get a family, and I'm not going to pursue any of that kind of stuff, because I just want to go get everything I can. So he works really hard, and lives for himself entirely, and accumulates a lot of things. He might be the single guy you see with a big house and a fancy car and all this other stuff because he's got no other person to take care of but himself. And some people will look at that and go, that's what I need. I have to work this hard to get this big house, have this fancy car, have this all this stuff. But really what happened is that person had envy. Their envy drove them to that. And because of their envy, they didn't have people in their lives. And at the end of the day, they worked really for nothing because there was no one to share it with. No one to give it away to. No one to enjoy life with. They just enjoyed their things by themselves. Solomon looked around that and says, it's meaningless. Chapter 4 goes on. 2 are better than 1. So coming right off of this section where this guy's got nothing, he says, look, 2 are better than 1 because they have a good return for their work. If one falls down, his friend can help him up. But pity the man who falls and has no one to help him up. Also, if 2 lie down together, they'll keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, 2 can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. And here we have the part of Ecclesiastes that everybody knows. But people don't know the context. When you don't know the context, you miss the meaning. When you don't know the context, you miss what he's trying to tell you. When you don't know the context, you miss the wisdom. You got to put it together. Here's the contextual understanding that Solomon's trying to drive home. I look around and I see something. I see oppression. It's everywhere. I look around and I see something. I see oppression and I see tears. And I see people in their pain, and I see people in their lack. I see people in their struggle. I see people in their toil, and I see no comforter. I see it. And it seems to me life is meaningless because I see all these problems. Oh, but then I saw something, and I noticed something. And once I saw this and noticed this, I began to get the answer. I began to see that there's a problem that is causing that toil and that no comfort. I'm seeing where the lack of comfort comes from. It comes from envy. The problem of a lack of comfort is because people are envying instead of caring. People are envying instead of sitting in the pain that people have. Instead of recognizing the tears of people, they're just seeing pain from afar, not connecting with it, and living their own lives. I see envy. And this envy drives people to work. And this envy drives people to go get things that are meaningless and to get bigger houses and bigger barns and get this and to get that. And they think life is all about that, and they work themselves to the bone. It's meaningless. There's no comfort because they're working so dang hard they can't even notice anything around them. All they can see is their lack. And if they do notice anything, they don't see pain and they don't see tears. They see, oh, that's a car I need. They don't see pain. They don't see tears. They're like, oh, I need a bigger house. This one's just not good enough anymore. They're seeing the wrong things. I see it. It's envy. Envy's the problem. And because there's an envy problem, they work so hard to get all these things, they can't see what's going on around them. And because they can't see it, because all they can see are their things and their vision's blocked by their things, well, there's still no comfort. So I see the meaninglessness of it. And so some people recognize, hey, you shouldn't work this hard, but they still missed it. So some people think it's all about rest, and that's what they think life is about. And so like, yeah, it'll all work out, and they rest. But you fold your hands, you'll just come to ruin. That's not what life's about either. No, there has to be balance. There's got to be rest, and there has to be work. There needs to be both. You won't find meaning in life unless there's both. You have to have it, but you have to have it in balance. And you have to have people in your life, because if you don't have people in your life, what's the point? What's the point? If you got no one to share these things with, no one to enjoy the pleasures of these things with, if there's no one to enjoy with, then it's meaningless. Because life is about people. And if you've got things, share them with people so they can share in your enjoyment of it. And if they share in your enjoyment of it, guess what? If they wanted to enjoy life in some way, maybe you were part of the answer for it. Why is there no comfort? It's this envy problem that causes us to chase the wrong things and to explore the wrong things and to see the wrong things. But if we wake up and begin to look around like Solomon did and see something, then we'll see that we can actually be a comfort to someone. And the lack of comfort is because people are blinded by their wealth. And they're blinded by their envy. But notice this cord of three strands passage that everybody knows. Watch this. Two are better than one, verse 9. They have a good return for their work. If one falls down, his friend can help him up. But pity the man who falls and has no one to help him up. Also, if two lie down, they'll keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Verse 12, though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. Did you notice the things that he's saying about being in pairs? If you're cold, they'll warm you up. But notice the last one, because it really connects. If two are together and one is overpowered, the other one will come to help. Overpowered. So go back to the beginning of Ecclesiastes chapter 4. What does it say? Again, I looked and saw all the oppression that was taking place under the sun. I saw the tears of the oppressed. They have no comforter. Power was on the side of their oppressors, and they have no comforter. What is God trying to tell us? Stick together. He's also telling us, for those who are powerless, bring power. Part of the unity of bringing people together in unity is it brings power when they're oppressed. So that power can rise up against the oppressor and say, no, that will not stand. It's looking at the things in Charlottesville and saying, no, I'm standing with my brother and that's not going to stand. It's bringing power to the oppressed. It's bringing comfort to those who are weeping. It's sitting with them and recognizing where that pain is and asking about that pain so you can know what comfort to bring. It's bringing different things so that they know that God is taking care of them too. This is why over and over again God tells us to take from the abundance that we have and give to the one who doesn't. But it actually doesn't say just take all your abundance and give it away. It means share it so you both have enough. Don't make yourself poor. Well, that's foolish. But help someone who is in need. John the Baptist said it the exact same way. We've mentioned it here several times, maybe you haven't heard it, but John the Baptist comes on the scene. We're in with this. John the Baptist, when he comes on the scene, there's a prophecy about him. It's found in Isaiah. It's quoted in the Gospels. That prophecy says this: behold, a reed swaying in the desert. Make straight paths for for the coming king. Saying that, in Isaiah, that there's going to be someone who's going to come. He's going to be a person out in the desert, and he's going to say, make straight paths for the Lord. He's trying to help people see God. And with that, the prophecy goes on in Isaiah 40, which is quoted in the Gospels this way. Every mountain made low, every crooked road made straight, every rough road made smooth. This reed swaying in the desert is proclaiming this to make straight paths for the Lord. That every mountain will be made low, and every crooked road will be made straight, and every rough road will be made smooth. And he says, so that everyone will see God. That's the purpose. So that everyone will see God. You'll find that in a bunch of the Gospels. In response to that, the people hearing this ask John the Baptist a question. What should we do then? What should we do? And he says this, to all of them. You of you who have 2 tunics, give one to the one who doesn't. You who have abundance of food, give to the one who doesn't. Then it says, the tax collector says, what should we do? And he says, stop stealing from people and actually just take the taxes you're supposed to take. Don't take more, because they were stealing. And then the soldier said, what should we do? And he says, stop using your power to abuse people and just serve them. And what he's basically saying is to these 3 people, this prophecy, every mountain made low and every valley filled in. So what happens is when you take from your abundance and you give to someone who's in an oppressed state, what you're doing is you're taking your mountain down. You'll see God better. Part of the problem Solomon's saying is envy is keeping you actually from seeing God, because God wants to bring comfort in this and he wants to use you to do it. If you can take that mountain down, you actually see God better. But with that too, when you fill that valley in, when you give the person who's oppressed and when they're crying out to God saying, hey, I don't even know where you're going to get bread tomorrow. And you take from your abundance and you give them some bread, and as they're crying out to God, all of a sudden that shows up. I mean, yeah, they'll thank you, but they also go, thank you, Jesus. And you know what happens? That valley gets filled in. As that valley gets filled in, all of a sudden they come up, and you know what happens? They can see God now. They can see God. We have to live our lives in such a way that others see God. And if the church doesn't respond to the oppression around us, if the church doesn't see the tears of the people around us, it'll never fill the valley in. If the church is too stuck in its envy, if the church is too stuck in its wealth, if the church is too stuck on the next gadget it has to have, you'll never see God, and no one else will see God through you either. We're to be, Ecclesiastes 4, that person coming alongside, where it says, pity the one who has no one to lay next to them. This is not a marriage passage. I understand why it's quoted. It's so much more. It's a call for the people of God to come alongside those that are oppressed and to bring warmth to those that are cold, to bring supply where there is lack, to bring food where there is none, and to bring our mountain down, to fill the valley in. And in order to do that, in order to be in the place that God would want us to be in, we have to have the Lord do an inventory of our heart. And we have to, like David, say, God, search my heart and see, is there envy in me? And see, am I working hard because of envy, or am I working hard just for a good reason? There's good reasons to work hard. I'm not saying working hard is a bad thing. Ecclesiastes 4 says you should have a handful of that. Just not 2. A handful. At the same time, is there rest built into your life? Because if there's not rest in your life, you won't hear God either. You won't have time to. You'll miss it. There should be rest, not just to hear the Lord, but there should be rest to enjoy life. There should be rest so that you actually can enjoy some of the fruit of your labor. And so part of the fruit of your labor should also bring enjoyment to others. And some of that enjoyment doesn't have to be just a poor person. They can just be like, hey, I got a great steak. I want to share it. We had the Johnsons over one day. We had a steak, and I was telling them, we're getting a good one. Because I want them to have a great steak with us. You know, and it's like, I want to share that with them. Have you ever had that thing where you love something so much you can't wait to share it? I was with my nephew and nieces this week, and I can't tell you how many little kids' movies they wanted us to watch with them. You ever had a little kid want you to watch one of their movies? It's awesome. But do you know why they're doing it? Because they find great joy in it, and they can't wait to share their joy. We need to be like that, where we find great joy in the Lord, and we can't wait to share the joy of what He's given to us. Say, you won't believe what my daddy gave me. Here, you want some? Share it. God's calling us to be a sharing church. Because if we're a sharing church, then what happens is someone would look around and go, you know what I see? I see something I didn't think I'd ever see. I see a comforter where there wasn't one before. May the Lord make us to be comforters in every season of toil that we find ourselves in. And with that, you'll have to keep your eyes open. Because your toil, you'll see, they'll be at work, it'll be at school, it'll be on your street, it'll be in your home, it'll be in your neighborhood, it'll be all around you. And it's up to you to see it. And as you see it, you may find out that that need is bigger than yours. If you find a need that's bigger than yours, you come tell me. We'll find a way and ask the Lord if He wants us collectively to jump into that need. Now, if the church starts responding like that, there are going to be people out there going to start to see God. They're not seeing Him. Mountains high, valleys not filled in. They're not seeing Him. Crooked road, it's still a crooked road. It hasn't come straight yet. Those are the things. A changing of a heart, of repentance. And just a simple question. God, is there envy? And if there is, here's the good news. Just confess it, and God says, it's done. You just confess it, and God says, that's awesome. I died for that. And God says, oh, you see that? It's awesome. I've seen that for a while too. I got my Holy Spirit in you, and we're going to fix that. Here's the deal. You don't have to fix yourself. You just have to have a simple recognition that it's there. And through that simple recognition it's there and saying, God, hey, I confess this is here. Would you help me? Would you give me grace with that? And let the Lord begin to change you. Don't strive. Don't exchange one labor for a different one. Let the Lord begin to work on your heart. Rise to your feet. God, we just pray that you would help us to see the things that we need to see. Give us eyes to see the world the way you see it. Give us eyes to see the things that you want to draw our attention to. May our eyes not be blinded by our busyness. May our eyes not be blinded by our wealth. May our eyes not be blinded by the desire for something somebody else has. But may these eyes be spiritual eyes that see the things that you see and how you see them. Father, if there's tears you want to direct our hearts towards, we give you permission to do that. If there's ways that you want us to come alongside people and help them, we give you permission to do that. And God, we also just want to celebrate a few things. We want to celebrate, you already do that in here. We want to celebrate that just a few weeks ago you did that to help out Jason and Anna. As she was crying out, how am I going to go see my grandmother who raised me? You've done that through so many different people in this room, and I've heard story after story after story of people seeing people's tears and coming alongside and helping. I thank you that's there. I thank you that's here, and we just want to celebrate your work in our lives already. And we just pray you continue to make us a people that are generous, that are sharing, and that bring your comfort wherever you want us to direct it. God, there are tears in this very room. There are things that are needs. And would you draw our hearts and our eyes towards those needs? And if there's things that you want to do in here amongst this body towards each other, would you make us aware and would you direct our hearts that way? God, we just thank you that you are present. We thank you see things that we don't see. We just ask you to direct us.